everybody, my name is Kim Hargrave and I'm the Education Director here at the Denison Pequot Seapost Nature Center. And I am really excited today to talk all about birds. And to help us out today, we have our white pigeon here named Rosie. And I have to give you a few warnings before we get going. Rosie is a very nosy pigeon and she gets into all sorts of mischief. I do have her on jesses at the moment, but later on today I'm going to let her fly around a little bit. So if you notice some things banging around in the background, it's probably nosy Rosie getting into some trouble for us. So just to do a quick introduction to Rosie, that's one thing that birds do is they have to go to the bathroom. Just so you know, birds don't have bladders, so when they have to go, it comes right on out. Rosie came to live with us in the fall, and it's hard to know exactly what her story is. Rosie is not a traditional native rock dove or pigeon that you would see out in the city. She was probably bred for a wedding release or as a pet or something like that, and escaped from her owner and was brought here to the Nature Center. And we were able to get her fattened back up and things like that, but then she just seemed to fit right in here, and so she's become one of our ambassador animals here at the Nature Center. Few cool things about pigeons though, because they're birds, when you take a look at her, one of the first things you're going to notice is her pink feet right there. Ooh, and she really wants to fly around. She's got those pink feet right there, and she's got 4 toes on her feet. All birds have 4 toes, and those feet change depending on where they live and what their lifestyle is like. So I brought some of our bird mounts down here to show you some different types of bird feet. So if you look over here, we have a mallard duck. Take a look at his orange feet right there. Those orange feet are webbed, and they're going to help him swim. So whenever you see a bird with webbed feet, you know it's a bird that's going to spend a lot of time swimming around in the water. But then, when you take a look at our great blue heron's feet, look how long his toes are. And those long toes actually help him as he's wading through the water. And so he doesn't get stuck in the sticky mud. If you ever stepped in a pond and put your foot down and had your shoe come off in the mud, all right, that great blue heron won't have that problem because those long toes help to spread out his weight. Now, Rosie's toes, though, are to help her to perch. So she can perch on my finger, she can perch on a branch, and they also help her to walk around. Rosie's are really good at walking on surfaces, and that's why when you go to the zoo or you go to a city, you might see pigeons kind of wandering around looking for crumbs and things like that. They're very, very good at walking, and their feet actually help them with that.
So for those tuning in, how long have we had Rosie here at the Nature Center?
So Rosie came to us in the fall. So we've had her about 6 or 7 months at this point. And like I said before, she is just a wonderful pigeon, very charismatic, and has kind of won our hearts over here and quickly became one of our ambassador animals. Look at that, she's just, hanging out and taking a little preen there. All right, so all birds have very unique feet, and that's a special feature. They also have amazing beaks. And so if you look at her beak right there, her beak is designed for picking up small objects. So think about like a pair of tweezers. And she likes to eat seeds and berries and small insects. And that's what her beak is designed for, just like a pair of tweezers. And if we go back to our duck over here, his beak is like a strainer. It goes down to the bottom of the pond, picks up some plant matter, and it's able to swallow the plant matter, but the water squirts out the side. So it's pretty cool. Our great blue heron, on the other hand, has this long beak that's perfect for picking up things like fish and frogs. And one other mounted bird I have right over here is a raven. Ravens' beaks are good for just about anything. Ravens are very adaptable birds, very smart birds, and they can eat just about anything from a mouse to a piece of fruit to seed and things like that. So they have a multi-purpose beak right there. All right, so beaks and feet, really, really important for birds, and it's 2 features that make them birds. Another really important feature, which is always the first thing that people think of, is their feathers. And birds have a lot of different types of feathers on their body, and depending on what kind of bird they are, will depend on their feather types. So I have some feathers here from some different animals, and I'm going to hold them up. The first one I'm going to hold up is a tail feather from a red-tailed hawk. So tail feathers actually help the birds steer. So they might tilt their feathers to be able to go in different directions. All right. And then you also have flight feathers. And these are the feathers that are on the wings of the birds. And then you also have all the feathers that help to keep them warm and give their bodies shape. So this part right here is called the down, and this is downy feathers right here. All right, so feathers have a lot of different jobs. Flight, steering, keep them warm, give them shape, but they also come in all different colors. So when you look at Rosie's feathers right here, you can see that they're all white. So for a pet pigeon, all right, this would be a great thing. It's really fun to have a pretty white pigeon, but think about it if it was out in the wild. It would not be well camouflaged, and so it would be much more susceptible to being eaten by other birds and other animals because it'd be very easy to spot and to see. Now, some birds are brightly colored, and that's to show off for their mates, especially male birds. So if you take a look at our duck right here, it's the male mallard with the green head. The female mallards have all brown on them. That helps them to camouflage with their surroundings. So depending on the type of bird will depend on the colors that they have. But usually when you see a brightly colored bird, it tends to be the males, while the females are more brown so they can hide as they're sitting on their eggs. Now I'm going to actually let Rosie off if she wants, and so she can fly around a little bit. So if you look right here, what I'm taking off is her leash, and then she has these little leather jesses on. I'll leave those on because those won't hamper her flight if she wants to fly around. She may not want to right now. That's okay.
She does tend to hang out with us quite a bit.
So if you look at Rosie right now, when she does start to fly, you're going to hear her wings make a lot of noise. And that is actually her feathers hitting against each other right there. And other birds would have quieter feathers. We've talked a lot about owls here, and owls wouldn't want to make that much noise when they're flying because all of the mice and things they eat would hear them coming and run away. So the reason why pigeons can get away with noisy feathers is they eat seeds, they eat berries, those things can't run away, but they also will use that noise of their feathers to distract predators. So they make that noise and the predator kind of gets confused with that noise. The other thing that pigeons can do while they're flying is they actually can fly fast for a pretty long period of time. That roundness on Rosie's breast is actually mostly muscle. So pigeons are actually really strong flyers, and they can turn quickly to try to escape from predators. So don't let pigeons fool you. They're pretty smart, and they're pretty good at escaping different predators. And now she's showing off, making some noises up there. All right, a few other things that I wanted to talk to you about birds have to do with something they do in the springtime. Right now, a lot of our birds are migrating back here to Connecticut, and they're starting to set up their nests. So birds of prey, a lot of them have already started to nest. So hawks, owls, things like that, they have their nests set up and they are laying eggs and their babies are starting to hatch. Well, our songbirds wait just a little bit longer in order to do that. They want the weather to be a bit warmer because a lot of them are eating insects. And one bird that's a really common bird nest for us to see is this one. This one right here is the nest from a robin. And robin nests are great. They're pretty easy to identify because of all the mud that they use. And they're going to use grasses, and when I look at this really carefully, I can see some grapevine bark in there and things like that as well that they're using to make their nests. So birds are using all sorts of things from the wild to make their nest. Don't bother putting out things to help them make their nest. There's no reason to put out yarn or anything like that because that can actually harm the birds when they put it in their nest, especially if there's bright colors in them. It'll make their nest more noticeable. So let the birds find things on their own. They're really good at finding it. You might notice though, if your dog's out sleeping in the sun, a bird coming by and pulling a few pieces of hair off your dog. and they'll use that to help soften their nest. Once they have their nest, the birds usually lay different types of eggs in there depending on the bird, depends on the number of eggs, how long they have to sit on them, whether mom and dad take turns or if mom is the only one who sits on the eggs. I also got a big egg out here. This is not an egg we'd find around here, all right, but it shows up really well on camera, so I chose this one. This is an ostrich egg right here, and ostriches have the biggest eggs of any birds, all right, and so kind of shows you how strong these eggs are. Eggs are actually pretty strong compared to what you might think. So these birds have tiny little spots on their eggs, and that actually lets oxygen go right into the egg so that the bird can actually start to develop. The next time you're cooking with an egg at home, when you crack it open, notice the yolk in there. The yolk is what's feeding the baby bird that would develop if those eggs happen to be fertilized. So eggs are a really neat thing to study and to take a look at. Sometimes people get a little worried that they see some eggshells on the ground, but they think they have baby birds in their nest. Don't worry about it. What usually happens is moms are really good about cleaning up after their birds, and so after their babies, and so once they hatch out, mom will like kick some of those pieces of eggshell right on out of the nest so that it's not messing up her nest. One last thing I wanted to talk about birds today are their bones. And this is a very large bone, which means it had to come from a really big bird. And it actually came from a great blue heron right here. And this is what we call the keel bone. And the keel bone is the bone that goes right here. And if you look, you see how it sticks out like this, like a keel of a boat? Well, that is where the muscles attach for the bird's wings. Birds are such strong flyers, they have to have really big breast muscles to make sure that their wings can continuously be flapping. And so this extra piece of keel bone is what those muscles will attach to. Now, when you look at the bone carefully, you're going to notice that it has little holes all through it. Sometimes we say bird bones are hollow, and that's not 100% correct. They actually have what we consider a honeycomb structure. So they have these little tiny pieces of bone that go all through it and are holding it to make it nice and strong, but also light. And the birds have to have these light bones in order to fly. If their bones were built the way yours and ours were, we'd be too heavy to actually fly. If you listen right now, I think Rosie wants some attention. She was up there making a lot of noise behind us. All right, and so remember what I said, all of that round part right here on Rosie, oh, she's going to turn around on me now, is actually muscle right in there. And so she's a really strong flyer. When they have that big breast, you know they're good at flying. Now, ornithologists, or people who study birds, can actually tell different kinds of birds by the way they fly. So this is something that you can do at home. You can pay attention to the birds outside your window, all right, or in your yard, and look at them and see if they're flapping their wings a lot or not. So one of the birds I noticed around my house sometimes are turkey vultures. And the vultures, when they fly, they hold their wings up like a V and they rock back and forth. And they're just riding the air currents. They're hardly ever flapping their wings. Where other birds, like a robin, is continually flapping as it flies, just one beat after another. The same with crows and herons and things like that. Hawks, on the other hand, will flap and then they're going to glide back and forth. So pay attention to the birds around your house. See if you can notice some of these cool characteristics. Notice what their beaks are looking like. Notice what they're eating. Notice what their feet look like. You can use binoculars to take a closer look. Watch the way they fly and see how different birds fly around your house and see if you can identify them. I hope you enjoyed meeting Rosie and learning a little bit more about birds, and we'll be back next week with a few more fun things.
All right, you can join us Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 10 a.m. I'm just going to open it up to see if anybody has any questions. Ari would like to know what Rosie does if someone tries to eat her.
If somebody tried to eat her, which if she was out in the wild, because that doesn't happen here, it's a good advantage for her. She's a smart bird that she decided to make herself happy here at the Nature Center. She would do that erratic flying to try to escape the predator. And she would also make lots of wing noise as she flew to try to escape. And then she'd probably try to fly into a bush, because it's hard for a big hawk to get into a small bush. And so that's like a lot of times when you see a bird being chased, it goes right into that bush so that the big bird can't get there.
Now, related to pigeons would be mourning doves, right? And that's something that people would often be able to see at home.
That's right. So actually, doves and pigeons, the difference between them from a scientific standpoint is they're actually in the same group of birds. It's more that we talk about doves as being smaller, and I don't want to say cuter, but that's what a lot of people tend to think, because I think Rosie's pretty cute, and technically we call her a pigeon. But from a taxonomic standpoint, they're in the same groups.
Wonderful. And then Rosie eats birdseed, correct?
Yes, so Rosie gets different types of birdseed. We actually do buy special pigeon food for her, because pigeons and mourning doves, actually, if you're feeding the birds at your house, they don't usually eat the bigger seeds. So they don't usually go for the sunflower seeds. They go for the smaller little white seeds that are in there. So what I find, if I put mixed seed in my feeders, all the little tiny seeds, the millet, gets tossed down to the ground because the chickadees are like, we want the good stuff. But that actually really helps out the mourning doves and the pigeons, because they'll come down and they eat those seeds on the ground. Because of that larger breast, you usually can't fit on a regular tube bird feeder.
Ari also wants to know how sharp her beak is.
So actually it is, I've never actually felt her beak touching me. It's sharp the way a tweezer would be sharp. So it's not really going to cut anything the way a hawk's beak can tear food. This is more like a tiny little pair of tweezers that can pick up all those little pieces of seed or berries on the ground.
Christy would like to know if Rosie is a female. Oh, actually the question is from Dexter.
So you know what? It's kind of hard for us to tell whether Rosie is a male or a female. So I can't actually honestly answer that question, but we do call her a her and Rosie.
Because there are other birds that have more external characteristics, right? So what would be another example of a bird that we would be able to more easily tell?
So birds like cardinals are very easy to tell because they have different colors on them. Some birds you can tell by size. So if you come to the Nature Center and you look at our red-tailed hawks, you can easily tell our female red-tail from our male red-tailed hawk just by size alone. Some birds are really hard to tell, like blue jays as well can be really, really tricky. Ducks tend to be easier. So it really just depends on the species.
All right, great. Any other questions from the world of Facebook before we sign off for the day? We'll give them another minute. What is one of your favorite things about working with Rosie?
I love how she makes noise and how she comes in and just kind of takes over. So I'll be trying to talk about something else and all I can hear her is talking in the background wanting to get attention, which is a lot of fun.
We have a question again from Ari who wants to know what type of birds would live in the houses, in the birdhouses she makes.
So depending on what type of birdhouse you make will depend on the birds you can attract, but very common here is a lot of people make typical bluebird boxes, which hopefully you're getting bluebirds in soon, or sometimes we get tree swallows in them, and very often we get a really cute bird called a house wren in our birdhouses, and they're so fun to have.
And house wrens are pretty funny characters,
Yes,
and will often take over some of the birdhouses that you're not expecting. One of the things we discovered at the Nature Center is we had some donation boxes out, and those looked a little bit too much like a birdhouse, so the wrens decided to make them their houses. So keep an eye out if you have birdhouses around your yard to see what sort of creatures are going in and out. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us today. Again, as Kim said, we're going to be doing our Facebook Lives next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we hope you can join us at 10 a.m. those days. Have a great day.